Now, Voices is historical fiction. It's a 21st century interpretation of private conversations based on a moment in time that can be documented in primary or secondary sources. Her name is based on Lavinia Martha Switzler's birthday, June 22nd, 1884. Lavinia's father was Frank Switzler, a native son of Howard County, who lived in Fayette and Arrow Rock during his lifetime. Arrow Rock was the first county seat of Saline County, and it was the stepping off point for the Santa Fe Trail, which actually started over in Franklin, Missouri, just down the road. On July 3rd of 1829, the Missouri Intelligencer newspaper, which was published here in Fayette, ran an advertisement encouraging people to buy property in the newly incorporated Arrow Rock. Howard and Saline counties are in the heart of Little Dixie, which is defined as the counties adjacent to what is now Interstate 70, that corridor between Kansas City and St. Louis and then north to Hannibal. And in the Little Dixie region, the culture, the politics, and the architecture were all very Southern in character. Missouri is Southern. However, Missouri has a complicated and really a conflicted relationship with Southern ideology by the very nature of being a border state. Missouri was admitted to the Union on August 10th of 1821 based on the Missouri Compromise, which was legislation passed by the U.S. Congress, and it provided for the admission of Maine as a free soil state along with Missouri as a slave state to maintain the balance of power between the North and the South. And additionally, as a part of the compromise, slavery was prohibited north of the 36-degree, 30-minute parallel, in excluding Missouri. In 1846, Dred Scott, an enslaved man from Missouri, sued his owner, Irene Emerson, for his freedom in the St. Louis Circuit Court. His case was based on Missouri's precedent dating all the way back to 1824, just a year after Fayette was founded, upholding the once free, always free doctrine, where enslaved people who were emancipated through prolonged residence in free states or territories would remain free when they returned to Missouri. Scott and his wife Harriet lived for 2 years in the free state of Illinois and the Wisconsin Territory, which was free soil based on the Missouri Compromise. But after a series of trials in Missouri that resulted in varying decisions, in 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that Scott, a slave from Missouri, was not an American citizen, and therefore he could not sue for his freedom in federal court. Chief Justice Roger Taney delivered the decision against Scott, stating that the Missouri Compromise was beyond the power of Congress and unconstitutional. And in addition, he stated that free states and territories had no authority to emancipate slaves, as it would be a violation of slave owners' property rights. This outraged abolitionists, and it drove the nation closer to war with itself. Frank Switzler was 10 years old when the Dred Scott decision was handed down. He was born in 1847 here in Howard County, enslaved by Claiborne Fox Jackson, who was a native of Fleming, Kentucky, and moved to Howard County as a 20-year-old in 1826. In 1831, he married Jane Sappington of Arrow Rock. Jane was the daughter of Dr. John Sappington, who brought quinine west of the Mississippi to treat malaria and literally made millions of dollars selling those pills to people on the Santa Fe Trail. Dr. Sappington was very active in Missouri politics and created a political dynasty with 2 sons-in-law and a grandson who served as Missouri governors. The first elected was Meredith Miles Marmaduke in 1844, followed by Claiborne Fox Jackson in 1860, and then John Sappington Marmaduke in 1884. Now, Jackson served in the Missouri House for 12 years from 1836 to 48, and then in the Missouri Senate from 1848 to 1852, before being elected the 15th governor of Missouri in 1860. The 1860 census reports that Jackson enslaved 48 men and women, and Frank Switzler was listed in that census as property of Jackson, and he was not freed until emancipation. Jackson's first wife, Jane, died a few months after their wedding, and 2 years later, in 1833, he married her sister, Louisa. She died in 1838, and in that same year, he married Jane and Louisa's widowed sister, Eliza Sappington Pearson. Eliza was Lavinia Pearson Bradford's mother. Lavinia Bradford, who was Claiborne Fox Jackson's niece first and then stepdaughter, married Dr. Charles Bradford, who was a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, who came to Arrow Rock in 1840. Lavinia and Charles were married soon after, and they purchased a home on Main Street. And this is the house where Frank Switzler's wife, Adeline, labored as an enslaved person, and then after emancipation. Her portrait is displayed in that house today, which is the home to the Arrow Rock Coffee Company. Adeline was given to Lavinia Bradford by her grandfather, Dr. John Sappington, in 1853. The bill of sale reads, "Known all men by these presents, that I, John Sappington, for and in consideration of the natural love and affection I have for my granddaughter, Lavinia Bradford, wife of C.M. Bradford, and for the further consideration of $1 I have in hand, unto the said Bradford, the receipt whereof, and hereby acknowledge, that I have this day granted, bargained, and sold, and by these presents do give, grant, bargain, and sell unto the said Bradfords 2 Negroes, Susan, aged 17 years, and Adeline, 7 years, to have and to hold until said Bradford and his assigned heirs the said slaves during their natural lives. The said slaves having been valued in the division of my property made this day among my children and grandchildren at the sum of $1,300, under hand and seal, this 10th day of September, 1853. Frank and Adeline were married soon after emancipation, and according to the 1870 census, were living on Morgan Street in Arrow Rock. Sometime after 1870, Lavinia moved their home to Van Buren Street, where it stands today. And she deeded it to them shortly before the birth of their youngest child, Lavinia Martha Switzler, on June 22nd, 1884. They had 4 children, one of whom died in infancy. Eola was born in 1875 and Fielden in 1882. Eola and Fielden never married, and they inherited their parents' home, where they lived until their deaths in 1960 and 1964, respectively. Lavinia Switzler married Charles Buck Henderson from Arrow Rock. Lavinia passed away in 1930 and Buck in 1966. The Switzer family are all buried in the Sappington African American Cemetery just a few miles from Arrow Rock. Frank died in 1915 and Adeline in 1916. Their obituaries were published in the Arrow Rock Statesman and read, April 2nd, 1915, departed this life. Frank Switzler, better known and revered as Uncle Frank, lay down his burdens here to sleep until Gabriel's trumpet summons him before the judgment throne of his Lord and Master. He, after many years of occasional suffering, was taken sick early in September, from which attack he never recovered, and on the night of March 27, 1915, dropped into a sleep from which loved ones could not recall him. He will respond now only to the voice of God. Uncle Frank was born in Howard County, October 24th, 1847, the home of Claiborne Jackson, where he grew and served until emancipation liberated him. He has abode in our midst for more than a quarter century, always commanding esteem from those with whom he was thrown both in business and social life. At the age of 27, he cast his religious life with the Free Will Baptists and later joined the Masons. He leaves to mourn his going a devoted wife, 2 sons and 2 daughters, 1 son having preceded him into eternity. Besides these many friends, both white and black, a familiar character is gone from amidst, cared for by our Savior, until we too shall be called to account for our time spent here. And then in June of 1916, a tribute to Aunt Adeline. In the late afternoon of June 8, 1916, the angel, death, again entered our village and bore away one of our most beloved dependents. It was on Aunt Adeline we called when sick, when we wanted something special, palatable. Her gift as a cook was always served to us so lovingly. There are so many ways in which we will miss her big-heartedness. Time will accustom us to her absence, but time will strengthen the force of her loss. She became the possession of Mrs. Lavinia Bradford at the age of 4 years, which was actually 7 years. And under this wise and loving supervision, she grew into womanhood, a competent, capable, and efficient help. Not only in the bonds that the laws of our country then held her, but when those laws were revoked, she was trained to take up her independent life. Even in separate life from her mistress, there was a deep-founded love and devotion for Mrs. Bradford that was sublime in its perpetuity. Devotion a mother is little greater. Aunt Adeline was born in Saline County in October of 1847 and has lived in our community ever since. After her marriage to Frank Switzler, who preceded her to eternity, she raised a family of 4 children, 3 of whom remain to often feel the want of mother. I'm an 8th generation Arrow Rocker on my mother's side and a 6th generation on my father's side. And I grew up just a few miles south of Arrow Rock, attending church there and volunteering with the Friends of Arrow Rock. I was taught growing up that there were indeed slaves in Arrow Rock, but they were happy slaves who were well treated. Frank and Adeline were the exemplars of this happy slave narrative, and it was not until I was well into my adulthood that I realized that the happy slave narrative was indeed a myth, just as Frederick Douglass had pointed out in his 1845 book. The reality of slavery was not the romanticized version I was taught in Arrow Rock. And through her play, Michelle Tyrene Johnson explores not only a possible conversation between Frank and Adeline, but she also challenges her audience to consider a different perspective on how formerly enslaved people viewed their oppressors. In her director's notes, Chioma Anyanwu shares a story of how when she played the role of Adeline for the premiere in 2021, she was approached by an audience member who was conflicted by this relationship between Adeline and the woman who enslaved her. This audience member, a white woman, wanted to believe that the two women had a cordial and loving relationship. After all, that's what she'd been told all these years. The Switzlers named their youngest child after the woman who enslaved them, and Adeline and Frank's obituary said as much. Much discussion has occurred in the Arrow Rock community since the premiere of Her Name. The playwright's words and the actor's performance open conversations that are bringing new perspectives and a reality to this happy slave narrative which has lingered for centuries. Art is attention-getting. Art is very powerful. It is truly my honor, and I'm humbled to introduce you this evening to Frank and Adeline Switzler.
No.
It's the right thing to do.
No.
Adeline,
The answer is no.
Lavinia is a beautiful name, ain't it? Don't be like that.
I don't see why you don't understand.
What I understand is that Miss Lavinia gave us this house.
It ain't that simple.
This really nice house.
That's a block from her house.
You ain't making no sense.
You know what don't make no damn sense? You bothering me about naming this child the day we had her. Susan just left out here 5 minutes ago to help deliver the Jackson baby.
We can't just be calling her she or her. She needs a name now.
Then let's name her June. June, born in June. Sounds pretty?
I think it would be mighty nice for us to name her after Miss Lavinia. It's where we made a baby, in this here house.
Oh, hush. If you want to name the baby after a place she was made, let's call her Ararat.
That ain't funny.
No, it's not.
What do you want to name the baby?
I would name her after my mama or after yours, but we don't know their names now, do we?
Oh, that's cold.
No, that's sad. But at least this baby and our other babies will grow up knowing their mama and their daddy. They'll know that they was born to a strong daddy named Frank Switzler and a mama who loved them named Adeline Switzler.
Of course they're going to know all that. They're going to know the sky is blue and the grass is green, too. Woman, you ain't making a lick of sense. You need to rest anyways.
You want me to name my baby girl after her.
Adeline be a pretty name.
I know my name is Adeline, and I know it's pretty.
And it's a white name. Someone named you after some white lady.
That don't have nothing to do with nothing.
Sure it do. Do you know who you was named after?
No.
Do you know if you was named after anybody?
No, I don't.
So let's name our baby after someone we know.
Fine then, we know lots of women.
But none like her.
I'm not naming my baby after someone who owned me.
No, it'd be after the woman who gave us this house.
Same woman.
So what?
So what?
You kept working for her after we were free. I thought you liked her.
For a white woman, she all right. She treated me decent enough.
See?
See what? She still had me listed down in a book as property, and I was given to her. Like people give folks a cat from a big litter.
And she gave us this house.
Blood money.
It ain't blood money. Besides,
What?
this the least she owe you.
Make up your mind. She a good woman or she a bad woman who owes me?
She don't have to be a bad woman to own you.
Will you listen to what you just said? Own me. We're talking about a woman owning me like a dog, like a wagon. I'm not property. I never was. Neither was you.
I know. But none of this was her fault. She just trying to make up for all this.
She want to make up for something. She could have given me the house that she lives in and let me own her for just 20 years or so.
You talking foolishness.
I'm not naming my baby after her.
Look, woman, I'm the head of this house and you're going to do what I say.
Get it,
You the
girl.
head of this house?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Fine then.
Girl.
And you can cook the food for this family.
All right.
You can clean this house, and you can nurse this baby, oh, and you can give yourself.
Wow, girl. Wow.
Adeline, don't be like this.
Then don't you be like that. This is my baby. Why don't you understand?
I understand, so we got to name her something. Maybe I just want her life to be not easy.
How do you figure that?
If she was Miss Lavinia, or she has Miss Lavinia's name, maybe folks be kinder to her. Not give her such a hard time as a Negro woman when she grown.
Frank, you know there is no such thing as people being nice to a colored woman because of her name.
But there might be.
No, there won't be no better way. Do you know your grandma's name?
What?
Do you know your grandmother's name on either side, your mama's mama or your daddy's mama?
What does that have to do with
Me
any?
neither. I hear them white ladies talking about what they're going to name their babies after. None of these women don't know nothing about who these babies going to be before they come into the world. They don't even know if it's going to be a girl or boy. But you know how they decide if it's a girl child?
I really don't care nothing about how these white ladies name their babies.
They name their babies after their grandmothers or their husband's grandmothers if that name was prettier. And it ain't fair. It ain't fair that we can't do that.
So what? They ain't trying to name their babies after their grandmothers to honor them, out no respect. They just want to hurry and come up with the girl's name because
Because what?
nothing.
Say it. It's because girls don't matter.
That ain't what I said. Not exactly. With the white men, it can be because of land and money, and the family name goes with the boys. That's all.
It ain't all, and you know that. You Negro men think that boys are more important too.
There's nothing wrong with loving our sons.
And there's nothing wrong with loving our daughters too.
It's because I love our daughter that I want her named after Miss Lavinia. I want her safe and protected.
You think a name gonna do that? It ain't before. When our people were stole, they had a name. They had a family that had a name. That didn't stop them from throwing us on a boat, snatching us away.
I don't understand why we talking all this mess about Africa or about this baby's name. We didn't go through all this when Eola was born.
That was different.
Why was that different?
God dang it, for the 100th time, because you want us to name our baby over a woman who owned me, who would still be owning me if that war doesn't set things right, who would have owned our baby. if that their civil war hadn't ended.
You're right. She could have let you free sooner.
Now you getting it. She done had me since I was a kid, but since she was grown, at any time she could have just let me be as free as the air, as free as the stars in the sky.
But I still want her protected.
Protected from who? From white men who say, oh, she's got a nice white name, I won't touch her. Or from white women or girls who say, she's got such a pretty name, I won't spit on her or call her something that ain't her name. That's not how people are, Frank.
But it will protect her. Just a little bit. Just like living in this house protects us. Just a little bit.
You mean because we are under the protection of Miss Lavinia? Because she freed me when she had to, and just a minute ago gave us this house?
I got a feeling about this little girl. She's special. I can feel it. I can see it in her eyes.
I feel it too. Now, remember when I was talking about not knowing our grandmother's names? This time I was carrying it, I don't know why, I just keep thinking about it. All the women we're never going to know in a place we can't see from the tallest building in Ararat. And then that started me thinking about the future. We were slaves, and now we're not. She's not a slave. She'll never be. And neither will her daughter, or her daughter after that. Maybe she'll have to work for a white woman, maybe all our daughters will, but that don't mean they gotta give their souls to white women, to white men. A name is all you got that lets people know who you are, what your soul stands for. And that's why when we bury the dead, the name is the first thing we carve into that piece of rock.
I don't want to talk about death today. This baby got here, she's healthy. She's strong. She's special.
I'm just saying, you want her name to stand for something to other folks, to white folks. I want her name to be the treasure she carries inside of her, that we say to her to remind her who she is, so she can do the same for her baby. So that when we whisper her name to the wind whispers it back.
So what do we whisper to the wind?
Miss Sally and I was talking the other day. She was telling me about how when she was a little one, her mama would tell her about Africa when no one was listening.
They would have beat her half dead if they caught her doing that.
That's why she didn't let them catch her. Anyways, Miss Sally told me her mama's name back home in Missouri. It means beautiful.
You know, we cannot be giving our children no African names. Slavery be over, but white folks be white folks.
I know.
You know, I can't stand to see you sad.
We'd be free almost 20 years, and I want my baby to have a name that reminds me of the summer breeze she was born in. A breeze that can take you anywhere, that can even carry you to a home you've never been to before.
How about we have a compromise?
An Ararat compromise.
You tired, woman. You are tired. You gave us another strong baby, and I want you and the baby to get some rest. So here's what we'll do. We'll name her after Miss Lavinia. But that's out in the world. So the world shall be Lavinia Martha Switzler. Miss Lavinia will be happy that we showed her some respect since we live just a block away, and I do think the townsfolk will see that she and the rest of the family got some Bradford protection on her back.
Maybe you're right. White folks can be cruel and cold, and a lot of them still want to treat us like we still belong to them. I don't think that's ever going to change.
And we can't always be around to look after our babies.
So what's the compromise in this Missouri compromise?
In this house and outside, when only family and the wind can hear us, we can call her Zira.
Really? Really, Frank, you serious?
But only here. Just around here. You gonna be all right with that?
A pretty little girl? Our pretty little girl? We're going to say her name here where it counts, where the wind will carry it wherever she wants to go. Zuri.